how to figure out portion sizes. So I often get questions from people asking me how to know what portion size is the right portion size, how much they should be eating, what that looks like in their plate. And today we're going to address all of that. The way I do my portion sizes is I do it based on what my body tells me and my own hunger and fullness cues. So I'm gonna teach you how to do that. But before we do that, it's also important to acknowledge that not everybody is in the right space to do that right now. If you have like zero notion about what a calorie is, portion sizes are, if you have been eating portions that are way too big for a long time, then it can be hard to tune into your body signals right away. So this video is going to be in two parts. First, we're going to talk about the external signals that you can focus on, and then we're going to talk about the internal signals that are the ones that I think are the most important. So first thing you need to do, get familiar with what a calorie is and like a portion size is, a serving size is. Basically, a calorie just measures the amount of energy that a certain food is going to give you, and you need this energy in order to make your body function. So calories are very important and they are a good thing, not to be demonized. And although things aren't as simple as calories in versus calories out, like some other nutritionists would like you to believe, there is truth to that, definitely. And if you're eating way more than you're burning, then you are going to be gaining weight, and the opposite is true as well. So the amount of calories that you should be eating every day depends on a lot of factors, like if you're a man or a woman, if you like the height you are, your weight, your level of physical activity. But in general, for weight maintenance, it's about 2,000 calories for women and 2,500 calories for men. So now that you know that, it's also important that you start familiarizing yourself with serving sizes that you see on like nutrition labels. A serving size doesn't necessarily mean that you have to eat only this amount, but it is a good idea to have certain notions of what that looks like, because again, if you've been eating huge portions for a long time, you probably have like a kind of distorted version of what a serving size is. So just look at labels, look at what a serving size looks like, compare that to the serving sizes that you are eating, to the portions that you are eating. This should be like a judgment-free situation. Like, don't go judging yourself like, oh no, I'm eating way too much. Just observe and collect data. This is just to kind of raise your awareness on portion sizes, and then if you realize that you are eating really big portion sizes, you can start to reduce them a little bit, little by little. You'd never want to go from like a 5,000 calorie diet to a 2,000 calorie diet. That would be terrible. One thing you can do to help you with portion sizes in the beginning is to use the plate method. So basically, you're going to take a plate, I think the standard size like 9-inch plate, and then you're gonna fill it up with half fruit and veggies, 1/4 of protein, and 1/4 of carbs. Now, this can vary a little bit. Personally, I usually do like 1/3 of like everything, or like half carbs and 1/4 of veggies and protein. Like, it can shift a little bit, but it's just to get you to have all the macronutrients, all the food groups on your plate, and to help you get this kind of balance, and to understand that a healthy meal is not going to be having a huge plate of spaghetti and then like 2 grapes on the side. Another thing you need to focus on in order to have adequate portion sizes is to choose whole foods whenever possible, because basically whole foods are very nutrient dense. And on the other hand, if you're getting foods that are really processed, really high in sugar, fats, things like that, then those foods are really calorie dense. And so you can have way less of these foods for the same amount of calories than you can for whole foods. This is not to say that energy dense foods are bad by any means. It's just that if you've been used to eating these types of foods more, then it's probable that your portion sizes are going to be bigger than necessary in terms of calorie, if you like compare the portion sizes to the calories. So it's a good idea to have a good balance, a good healthy balance of whole foods and some processed foods. But in order to do that, make sure that you're really focused on increasing whole foods like fruit and veggies, whole grains, beans, legumes, all of that. So now I like to reiterate that I don't typically think that all of these solutions are the best ways to track your portion sizes. I think that it's better to listen to your body's internal signals, and that's what we're going to be focusing on next. But I just think that for people who are beginners or who have like zero notion of any of that, it can be helpful to kind of get like this basic starting point. So now that we're looking at your body's internal signals, the first thing that you need to do is you need to learn to use the hunger and fullness scale. Now I talk about this scale a lot and I have an entire video on it right here on the description for more detail, but in general it's just about using the scale to position yourself, position your hunger and fullness levels before, during, and after a meal. And this scale goes from 1 to 10, 1 being you are absolutely starving, ravenous, and 10 is like you're super stuffed, overly full, you feel sick. And the goal is that before your meal, you look at yourself on, like you try to position yourself on the scale and be like, okay, which number would I find myself on? It should be ideally close to around 3 so that you're not like too hungry, but also you're like decently hungry. And then in the middle of your meal, or like 3/4 of your meal, you can be like, okay, how do I feel now? And ideally then you should be around like a 6, like end of 5, beginning of 6, like, okay, I'm not that hungry anymore. I'm starting to be like a little bit satisfied, but I should keep on eating in order to reach full satiety and like full satisfaction with what I'm eating. And then do it again at the end of your meal and make sure that you haven't gone to like a level 10, which is too full. Again, you should be around like a 7. Be like, okay, 7, 8, I feel full, satisfied, I don't want to eat more or else I'm gonna feel overly full. It's also important that you track all of these kind of assessments on the hunger scale so that you can learn to discern patterns. So for instance, if you start to realize that for lunch you really often let yourself get to a 1 on the scale, then it could be a good idea to either try to increase your breakfast, either try to have an earlier lunch, or either try to have a snack in between breakfast and lunch so that this doesn't happen again. And then if you find yourself eating closer to like a 5 or 6, then you can make your lunch a little bit later or like have a smaller breakfast. And if you find yourself eating until you're way too full, you can try having smaller portions, starting out with smaller portions and then seeing how you feel about that. There are always things that you can do in order to tweak the portions that you are having, but you really, in order to do that, you really need to rely on this hunger and fullness scale, and you need to do this really regularly so that you can actually see a pattern forming. Now, I also had a subscriber comment something that was very interesting, and she said that she suffered from an eating disorder previously, and so the numbers on the hunger fullness scale were like triggering for her, which I totally get. So I also wanted to include a few things that you could do if you don't want to use the hunger fullness scale, or at least if you're uncomfortable with the idea of numbers. So if it's just the numbers that bother you, the first thing that you could do is you could use the hunger and fullness scale, but just without the numbers. So try to see it instead of like a scale, try to see it as like a cycle, like a circle. And so towards the beginning of the cycle, then you are starving and you're like uncomfortably hungry and you absolutely need to eat. And then as the cycle progresses, it's like kind of the same similar things as the hunger scale, but just without the numbers. And then once you get to the end of the cycle, you get to you being like overly stuffed, like super full, like you can't eat anymore. And then the cycle kind of starts over. Another thing you can do is you can use kind of images to tune into your body more. Like for instance, you can use the image of a balloon. So let's say that you are really starving, then it's gonna be like a really deflated balloon. And then if you feel that you're not really hungry, like you could eat, but you're not that hungry, then it can be a balloon that's like a little bit more inflated, but still like pretty flexible. You can kind of press down on that balloon. There's like wiggle room in there. And then if you're like super full, overly stuffed, then it's like a super balloon that's like full of air and it's like super tight, like you cannot move it at all. You can try to find an image. The most important thing is for it to be something that works for you, and that's something that you can do on a regular basis so that you can see patterns that start to emerge. And then another way to do this is you can focus more on your sensations, like your mental sensations. So the balloon was kind of like the physical sensations like of your stomach, but you can also focus on mental and like cravings. So instead of asking yourself if you're hungry or full, you can ask yourself, does this food sound appealing to me? First of all, you can ask yourself, does eating in general sound appealing to me? Do I want to eat right now? And then if you do, like does this food sound appealing to me? Is there any food that would sound better? Like how much do I want to eat right now? You don't have to quantify it with a number. It can just be like a feeling. It can also be something that you see in your head, like that fills up again, like a jar that's like more or less filled up depending on your level of wanting to eat. And then make sure that once you're done eating, you also take some time to ask yourself how you feel, if you were satisfied with the meal, if you felt like you wanted to eat more or less. And again, use all of these answers to reflect and to see if there are any patterns that emerge. And then more generally speaking, in order for you to learn how to listen to your body's signals, you really need to turn to more intuitive and mindful eating. You really need to prioritize your meal times. You need to make sure that you're getting like 20-30 minutes of meal time, like no distractions, where you're solely focusing on your meal, where you're able to really take the time to chew, take the time to enjoy your food, and then take the time to do your intuitive eating scale work. You also need to figure out the right balance of foods between foods that are like healthy and foods that you really enjoy. I like to use a principle that is that you should be eating 70% of foods that are both healthy and that you enjoy, and then 10% of foods that are just healthy even if you don't enjoy them that much, but you're still getting benefit from them, and then 20% of foods that are more treats. You need to really make eating a priority, because if you don't, there's always going to be other things that are going to be more important to you, and so you're never going to spend this time actually doing that. But please understand that all of this is linked when it comes to portion sizes. If you want this to be, again, something healthy, sustainable, balanced, that you actually enjoy doing, everything needs to be taken into account. You can't just read serving size and then put that on your plate and be fine. I mean, probably like 5% of people can do that, and this is also why building a healthy relationship with food is super crucial. You can't be doing all of this if in your head you still have like good foods and bad foods. You really need to understand that all foods are important, and that eating one food or the other doesn't impact your worth as a person, and that you need to be eating a good balance of everything in order to be healthy and in order for this to actually be sustainable. So I have a whole playlist on building a healthy relationship with food if you're interested, right here or in the description. That's it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like it and subscribe, and see you on my next one. Bye.